Hi, fellow tea lovers. Settle in, because we've got a story. I'm Nell.
And I'm Rose, and today we're bringing you the tea.
Across eras.
Well, welcome back.
Hey, dude.
Been a week, as always.
Yeah, usually it's a week. I've procrastinated so much homework, you would not believe it.
Motivation's been thin on the ground for me, too. I put up a bulletin board for the first time in a while. I'm trying to do, visual goals.
Yeah, I noticed it.
Yeah. And, of course, because it's me and I have a lot of downtime, in tiny chunks, it's all in calligraphy.
Ooh, yeah. That's a really hard thing to do. Good job.
I actually can't do long-term projects at work because it's just your concentration gets shattered too often.
Yeah.
But calligraphy's amazing for that.
Okay, good to know. I used to bead friendship bracelets in class because it gave me something to focus on and I could still pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I start browsing the internet, my focus is gone.
Motor learning, I always doodled. I was looking at a really neat thing on an artifact thread that I liked that was little doodles of bats.
Cute.
And I love that even on a vellum manuscript you had just a guy staring out the window bats. It just makes me happy.
Yay, bat. I have been kind of wanderlusting mentally. So, I'm like, oh, vacation. It's your fault. Because last week when I came over, I noticed you were watching Outlander.
Yes, I'm trying to catch up. The last season is coming out, and I saw this clip of the actress that's playing Claire, Catriona Balfe, taking off her wig for the last time. It's this really emotional moment.
I'm on season 4. So I quit watching half an episode into season 3 because there was so much SA happening, and I knew that Claire was going back to the future, and I was like, nope.
Yeah.
But I restarted
it. I had to go back and restart it as well because I kind of petered out because season 3 is my least favorite season.
I can see why. Not
for production value or acting or anything like that. It's gorgeous just like the entire show is, but I'm just so mad at the characters the whole time. And honestly, that just speaks to the value of the story. But I have a really hard time getting through that season. Finally powered through. I'm excited to rush through and get to the end so that I'm caught up.
I'm still in season 4. Man, it's bleak.
Yeah.
The show is bleak.
It continually just gets bleak. Yeah, exactly. It continually gets bleak and then is uplifting, and I think it's a really cool nod to the reality of it.
I agree.
It's a time travel story, so the nods to reality are important.
Agree. So, thinking about traveling and such, I was thinking about a place where I went with my daughter a while back, which was China.
The pictures are amazing. You guys sounded like you had so much fun.
Right. So it's 2019. My daughter has just graduated from high school and we've kind of been talking about let's do a fun trip somewhere. And one day at work, I'm just browsing Groupon's travel vacation packages. Never bought one before, but I know a few people who have.
Yeah, it's fun to look. I'm always camped out on the National Geographic tour website. Couldn't afford it to save my life, but someday.
Some of those trips cost more than my annual salary.
Is it weird that I really want to do the Antarctica one? I'm not even a cold weather person, but just to have been there.
Remember we worked with that girl at that place that shall not be named? And it was Christmas time, and she was like, no. So, my fancy sister-in-law has invited us all on a trip to Antarctica, and I need off during Christmas, and that's retail. And I was all, why would you want to go there?
I had totally forgotten about that.
Yeah, and of course she did get off because, as our boss said, it was a once-in-a-lifetime event. And
what do you mean? Yeah, no.
I was like, oh, I mean... And I remember teasing her and being like, why are you going to Antarctica? Why don't you go somewhere warm? And she was like, oh, that's our fancy sister-in-law. Sometimes she flies there for the weekends to study.
Wow. I mean...
Bora Bora. Yeah.
she flies to Bora Bora to study, but Antarctica is more...
Christmas vacation.
Of a formal holiday.
I'm pretty sure that for their honeymoon... Yeah, it was so our coworker's brother's honeymoon with fancy sister-in-law, I believe they went to the Arctic Circle because they had been to all these random places already. They're not married anymore, but anyways, that's how the other half lives.
Right.
So, anywho,
these are the types of people that ask, where you summer?
Right, right. One time she was telling us that her belt, which honest to goodness was like the size of a horse saddle wrapped around her, had been like handmade in some village. And I just was like,
It's a whole different world up there, isn't it?
wow. Yeah. So this particular trip I come across, it's like 9 days and 8 nights, or maybe 8 and 7, I can't remember, trip to China. And it includes airfare, hotels in 4 cities.
That is unheard of.
A tour guide, a lot of your meals, and some excursions. And you guys, it's $499. And I'm like,
This
no.
isn't real. Like,
Right. So immediately I read the reviews. And they're pretty good. And I'm like, what? So I researched the company, and it turns out to be this travel agency in Canada. And the company as a whole mostly caters to taking Chinese citizens to tours in other places. But they also have this like Canadian arm that kind of specializes in taking Chinese people who live elsewhere on tours in China, but pop it up on Groupon, and all these people in America are like, this was a great trip. And I'm like, it's a scam, right? No. And so I call my kid and I'm like, have you ever wanted to go to China? And it was such an amazing trip.
Those are the best experiences when it's just like, you know what, actually, yes, I will try this. Let's do it.
Like, we had a great time. And so the start of it, I think we had 3 or 4 nights in Beijing to begin with. I really liked Beijing. Like, Shanghai's way more modern, but Beijing was just so cool, and like the summer palace, and I really liked the food in Beijing a lot. So one thing we did there that was really cool was we went to the Great Wall of China.
Oh, that's so amazing.
So I hope you know this, but if you don't, no shame-ish. Basically...
Okay, I'm ready.
No ish. It's definitely an ish. Okay, so the Great Wall is this huge wall and fort combo that has been built in sections along the original ancient northern border of China. And when I say wall, the wall wasn't a singular wall that ended up being connected. Pieces of the wall were built everywhere. Mm-hmm. And at one point in history, it was like the Great Walls of China.
Which makes more sense.
And also, in the time it took to build the wall, which started in, I believe, 7th century BC, the borders change.
Yeah.
So, in the 7th century BC, China's first self-proclaimed emperor, who was Qin Shi Huang of the Qin dynasty, started the construction on it. So that was 7th century BC. Later on, the Ming dynasty was the one who really continued it from about like 1368 to 1644 AD.
That's a long ongoing process.
Right. And very little of the original walls actually still remain. I mean, 7th century BC is a really long time ago. I
love watching archaeology videos, and it's always interesting to me when, because they have the eye, and they're walking up a hill, and it's like, oh, this is clearly a rammed earth rampart. And I'm just, I believe you, but I'm going to need to see more. Right. How do you know? Right? The wall's original purpose was to provide protection from nomadic groups who would come down from the Eurasian sweep. It predates the Silk Road. Okay, but first I have to tell you about a wall. So if you are someone who has never seen a historical wall, you're all a wall around a city. Obviously, you know it's not just like 2x4s kind of wall. But just to give you an idea of this, my first experience with a wall of the sort, it wasn't near as big, obviously, as the Great Wall is, but in the Forbidden City in Beijing, the main wall that goes all the way around the outside of the Forbidden City is over 28 feet wide at the bottom, and it tapers up, not that much, only to about 23 feet wide. Yeah, siege weaponry can create massive amounts of damage, and so you have to plan accordingly. I mean, they're buildings in and of themselves. Yeah. Kind of like the London Bridge, the original London Bridge, how it was basically its own neighborhood. Yeah. And you don't think of a bridge as a building, but it acted much, much more like a building than a bridge. And so these outer walls, you know, they're built for protection. And then, of course, when you're passing through, like the tunnels through them, they're very big and imposing. You also can't march an entire army through it at once. Nope. Maybe 3 to 4 wide. And if you're on a horse, definitely could not fit easily through there. Mm-hmm.
So that's more like the wall that I'm talking about, okay? It's like fortress.
Oh,
Having the Great Wall helped the Chinese impose various like duties and tariffs on goods transported along the Eurasian sweep and then eventually the Silk Road. This is not a political podcast. I just need to clear something up. It seems like there's some misinformation on how a tariff works, okay? I'm going to give you an example of a tariff. Let's pretend that I sell really cool t-shirts. I buy my t-shirts from Shein. It is a fast fashion company that originated in China, and they're $5 a piece. And when I get them, I do my like cool crafts on them, and then I sell them for $40 a piece. So this is just pretend I don't really sell shirts. So the American government decides for some reason to put a tariff on goods imported from China. Usually a tariff is done almost like a punishment or like a restriction for the other country or to limit the flow of things. There's a lot of reasons. So if the American government decides there's a tariff, now my $5 shirts that I buy from Shein are costing me $10 because they're coming in from China and there is a tariff, and the tariff makes them cost me not $5 but $10. Now my profit that used to be $35 has been reduced to $30. So if I sold 50 shirts in a week, my profit used to be, let's say, $1,750 for the week. That's still a good amount of profit, but like I'm a little annoyed because I've gotten used to this lifestyle. And so I'm going to raise the price of my shirts. And I could just raise it, by $5 and then they could be $45. But quite frankly, I'm not going to do that because I'm annoyed. And now they're going to be $47. So the people who buy my shirts are now paying $47 for what used to be $40 because there's a tariff. The confusion seems to be in no way, shape, or form is China on the financial hook for my purchase from them, unless I decide not to buy from them.
If the cost becomes too high and you find yourself a different supplier, that's the only time they're ever going to even feel it.
The problem is the next best supplier, they're selling them for $15 a piece already. So I just want to be clear. If our government puts a tariff on something coming in from somewhere else and we purchase it even indirectly,
it does not punish the other entity.
Doesn't punish the other entity. Okay? So it is what it is. It's a way to make money. It sounds nicer than taxes, especially if you don't really know what's going on. So that's why I'm telling you. China did this back in the day. So the Silk Road was the network of Eurasian trade from about the 2nd century BC until maybe mid-15th century, I believe. At one point, it was over 15,000 miles long. It connected all the trade between East and West. Back to the Great Wall. The second big round of construction during the Ming Dynasty is when they started adding in watchtowers, barracks for the troops, and signaling capabilities via fire and smoke.
I imagine that's where you're getting the more recognizable shape of the tower and wall combination.
Yes. At that point, it's exactly what you remember from Mulan, the Disney cartoon from 1998. Long swooping walkways connected by tall towers, right? That's what I had in mind when I went. So, like the opening scene in Mulan, when they're like, oh no, we're under attack from the Huns, they light one of the, they're kind of like... Brazier. And then the guy at the next tower, which is a little ways away, sees the flame and knows to light his, so it's a signal. The Great Wall of China, like I had said previously, it's more of like a collection of fortifications. Together, even though they didn't all touch, actually covered almost 13,000 miles. And through time, the walls have had different names in China. At one point, they were called the Long Wall or Long Walls, and then the 10,000-mile long wall. There's been other names as well, but it has more to do with how Chinese language characters can be composed. So different walls were built in different places by different dynasties and, to serve different purposes. Back to the original, the Qin dynasty, that was the first dynasty of imperial China. Basically, there were all these tribe wars going on, and they ended up taking control of a bunch of them. They tried to create this structured, unified, centralized government. That did mean that the government basically went right through the aristocrats and were like, hey, laborers, you're ours now. We're going to control the purse.
So they're bypassing the traditional structure and just going straight to the common man. You work for me now. Just forget you know that guy.
Yeah, and because they did this, that gives them around 300,000 peasants in the workforce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
taking over the serfs in the feudal system.
They accomplished quite a bit with those peasants. This is where we got the mausoleum of the first Shen Emperor, which is where the Terracotta Army is.
Oh, cool.
And the Terracotta Army is a collection of terracotta sculptures of the Emperor's army, and it's designed to protect him in the afterlife. Of course, that was where the labor for the beginnings of the wall came from. Mm-hmm. And the first emperor, he ruled for 11 years, and then the dynasty fell 4 years later, because he had like 2 advisors who were like, we're definitely going to shove an heir on in here, like a legal heir. And then their like fighting led to the death of both of them and the heir. So that dynasty, it didn't last super long. The Confucians of China, they portray that first emperor as being a tyrant. But historically, there's just not enough information to know. After that dynasty, people would call the wall by variations of long wall because they could add like characters to it that would make it more representative of where the wall was in relationship to them, like fish wall by the stream wall.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. It wasn't until the Qing dynasty, which I believe started around 1644 AD, that long wall just became like the catchphrase for all parts of the wall. And then the English equivalent is Great Wall. Okay. Yeah. On my tour, they definitely called it the Great Wall, but they knew who they were catering to, so maybe that's why. One of the reasons they were able to build this amazing wall is because as far back as the 8th century BC, the Chinese people were already very familiar with building techniques. Many areas had built walls to fortify their own cities and towns in the period of the wars that were happening right before the first dynasty. I remember, from like elementary school, that all these great things that are built, like all the pyramids from different places in the world, the Great Wall, that if you died, they just kept on working, which, yes, that definitely happened. But in my elementary school mind, if you died, they would be like, well, cool, humans are a good mixture to seal the wall.
Okay, I had that exact same idea as a kid.
I figured it out, though, so hear me out. And you just put the rock on top of them and kept going, right?
Yeah, right. Sweet. They don't have to fill in that much mortar on that side.
The truth in that is that some areas of the wall are made with rammed earth. It's usually a mixture of things like damp sand, gravel, clay, silt, and literally whatever else is around, and mashing it into some sort of like frame or shape. And then if you had a stabilizer, animal blood was the thing you could use, or lime if you had it. So human blood, animal blood, I can see kind of in my mind where the telephone game is going with this, Right. And it is estimated that in projects like the Great Wall, hundreds of thousands of workers did die. It's just that there's no official records.
That's any large-scale engineering project of ancient workers really just aren't worth much.
Not so ancient. I constantly go back to when we watched Hell on Wheels. Loads of people died in the building of railroads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Besides the rammed earth, originally the wall would be built from the resources in the area. China is enormous. And, lots of landscapes and environments, and it's hard to move stuff around. So in the mountainous areas, they would always use the stone. And then in the more plains areas, it was the rammed earth. Yeah. And then during the Ming Dynasty, when they were adding to and fortifying the wall, they were starting to bring in more stone materials from other places. It's estimated that they added 25,000 watchtowers to the wall. Isn't that wild? That's so
just
many.
An amazing amount of effort. Yeah. It totally makes me think of that Eddie Izzard sketch when he's talking about Stonehenge. And we're like, oh, well, I'll help you carry the stones. It's not far, is it? 200 miles. 200 miles in this day and age. I don't even know where I live anymore.
As time passes, people in the West hear about the wall. Marco Polo, who is the guy who invented the, swimming pool game of hide and seek.
She's winking, in case you couldn't hear.
He's actually a merchant and writer from Venice, Italy.
Extremely interesting story.
Yes. But him and other dudes who traveled to China during the 13th and 14th centuries, none of them actually mentioned the wall. Isn't that strange?
That's so surprising.
The first mention that we know of was from the 14th century when a traveler from North Africa was writing about his travels and said he'd heard about the Great Wall, but it was a 60-day journey from where he was staying. He was like, I went around and asked a bunch of people, and they've never even seen it. They've just only heard about it. But back to Marco Polo, he used the Silk Road quite a bit. He had been doing this for a long time. I believe his uncle and dad were merchants originally. But he met people from the royal court of Kublai Khan. And Kublai Khan was impressed with Marco's intelligence and humility, a rare and great combination. He appoints him as his foreign emissary. Even though he wasn't the first person who extensively traveled throughout Asia, he left extremely detailed accounts that were very popular and well written. When my daughter and I went to China, one of the cities we stayed in was Hangzhou, which is the city of heaven, aka Marco Polo's favorite city, apparently. He said that the lakes in the area and the waterways reminded him of Venice. I was really tired by that point in the trip, and my main memory is getting to the hotel, and it's evening, and we're tired and hungry. We can't figure out how to, call for room service. We're like, okay, we'll just go down to the restaurants on the third floor of the hotel. So as we're going down, the elevators, I'm telling you, around the 7th floor, I can smell cigarettes, and I'm telling you, it's getting stronger and stronger. It's like smoke is filling up the elevator, and there's people who've gotten on with us by this point, and we're all just kind of like, what the heck? The doors open on the 3rd floor, and it's like a cigarette cloud rolls out. So the restaurant took up most of this open space, and it's China, so there's these huge tables that seat multiple people. Only one is occupied. It's near the front, and it's 4 dudes, and they are so hammered. They are getting up and going to the bathroom to barf and then coming back out. They are smoking mad amounts of cigarettes. And I just look at my kid and I'm so tired. I start giggling and I'm like, okay, let's just order food and take it back to the room. So we do. And we're sitting on this couch in the waiting area. And the floors are made of the shiniest tile ever. And this man walks off the elevator wearing the hotel robe and the hotel slippers. And he's smoking. He carried his cigarette down the elevator. And the floor was super duper shiny and his robe was really short. And I was hysterical. I was so tired. I couldn't stop laughing. My daughter was laughing. Picture. I did. I sent it to her from China. It was so funny. And you can't see any bits in the picture. Don't worry. I didn't
but you
do
can
that.
tell. You can
but
tell.
You know what's happening, right?
On.
So, yeah. So, anyways, that's my story about
it's
there.
Wow, he's just very comfortable with himself, isn't he?
He was. And my tour guide was like, yeah, that's Chinese AF. And I'm all, oh, okay. Cool beans.
Learn things every day.
Right. Okay, so in the 16th century, Europeans start reaching China by sea. And so people start talking about the Great Wall again. But it wasn't until 1563 in the account of João de Barrios. He toured Asia and he described it as he saw it. So that was the first written description. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which means that this committee in the United Nations, they've designated them a significant or influential in a global context.
More to the point, it is very hard to mess with it in a way that would compromise it. Yep. That's what UNESCO status gets you, is that some company can't go in and say, well, but we're going to make this pavement that's called Great Wall asphalt, and that's what we're going to do with it. Being a UNESCO site prevents that.
Oh my gosh. All right, so let me tell you about our experience with the Great Wall. Okay, so we're staying in Beijing. The portion of the wall we go to is called the Zhuyangwen section of the Great Wall. Our nice luxury tour bus rolls up. It's November, it's cold, but I have dressed appropriately. I've done my research. I bought a winter coat, which is not something I own. I live in the freaking desert. Yeah, it gets chilly, but I have a hoodie. China, the colors of China, if you've seen those beautiful paintings of the rocks or
the scroll paintings.
Yes. Muted colors, lots of muted grays and greens and blues. And that was very, very much how it was. And it was a little cloudy that day. I'm getting closer to the part where, you get to the wall and I realize there's 8,798,000 kajillion billion trillion stairs.
Yes.
And they're really steep. They're not uniform, obviously. Of course you're not going to be uniform. I know that. They're built at a different time. It's just something I didn't think about. So, some of the steps are they would have a width of 6 inches and a height of 12 inches. It was all over the place. And I look up at it and I was like, not doing that. And I'm at the bottom of it. Like, there's like everyone hanging out on the bottom 5 stairs.
I did the exact same thing at the Eiffel Tower. I looked up at that line and went, this is so picturesque here on the lawn, on the ground.
That's what I did. I had a great time on the lawn at the Eiffel Tower. So my daughter's like, poof! Her cute tail goes taking off, hiking the stairs with the rest of the people. So in my tour group, there's a mom and her 2 kids, and they're very interesting and fine, but the kids are quite clingy to me, and it wasn't great. And off goes the mom. I know. I'm like, I am definitely not your babysitter. But things are a little different in China. No, they were not Chinese. The girl, and she was a sweet girl, it was fine, really. She convinces me to go up some of the steps. Y'all, I almost died.
Desk jobs do not prepare you for cardio. You should do it anyway.
In a desk job, right?
You should.
And it's like so cold, and I'm wrapped up in all my appropriate clothing, but I'm like dragging myself up the Great Wall, which doesn't have an appropriate handrail, obviously. It was added in at a later date, and it's really low. And I'm not tall, but it's too low for me to even use it to like drag myself upward, right?
All options gone.
You have to go up so far. And I finally made it. Not even to the top of the wall. It was like a tower.
First outpost kind of deal.
Yeah, it was like labeled like lookout number 9 or something. I made it to that, and I look up and I can see like my daughter's jacket hood way up near the top. And I was really jealous, but I know my limits physically.
It's okay to acknowledge.
Anyways, one of my favorite things, it was so cool, even though I did find myself glancing sideways a lot for bones. I mean, obviously, I wasn't going to find them.
But not necessarily, obviously. I've been on vault tours where they just sort of, and to the left, you'll see the plague pit. There's a big pile of bones there, and there was. All right, so that's just, remain in situ a lot more often than you think.
Well, that's fair. I do have to tell you 2 stories about being there. The first is traditional Chinese bathrooms are, I call them squatty potties, but they're not what we call a squatty potty. They're not a stool. They're like a flat urinal in the ground.
You know what's weird is I've been to one of those, but in Florence. It was the weirdest thing. It was a glass factory.
Brought it back.
Right?
I have to say, it was super duper convenient and so easy to use. Like, as a woman, you already probably hovering over the toilet. And you gotta lay down your, like, tissue paper that immediately falls in the toilet, so you're hovering anyways. And then, you're trying to balance your bag and all your stuff because you don't have a purse hook. But when you're squatting on flat feet, everything made sense.
I disagree. Personally,
I loved it.
I did not. I was not a fan. I enjoy the sit. But
a lot of people on my tour kept trying to use the handicap stall until my guide was like, "You're in China.
Just deal."
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Even though I'm not a giant fan, I mean, of course, you deal.
And I also had done my research. I knew about toilet paper.
Yes.
So
that's just good
you
advice.
Don't flush toilet paper in those. But in all the areas where I was, which was very touristy, there were bathroom attendants in the public bathroom. And so after every few visits, they would like use their little grippy sticks to get the bag out of the bin and throw it away and then bring another one in.
There you go.
And some places had like a toilet paper dispenser, and it was just outside your stall. So you just grab what you thought you needed.
Yeah.
And go in.
And that also trips me up because I'm like, I can try and plan, but I can't guarantee anything.
Especially if you're squatting. At the one at the Great Wall, though, you had to scan your WePay, which I think is like part of WeChat, which is a big social media platform there. And it didn't charge you, but that's just how you got toilet paper. So even if I had coins, I couldn't have got toilet paper.
Oh, that's as bad as a pay toilet.
Well, it's a tracking toilet. The other
thing
that I thought was interesting about the Great Wall, so we get back on our tour bus, when we're all starting to wrap up, and there's a lady in my group, and she's like, "I lost my ring."
Oh.
And she had just bought a ring, and I guess she like waved her hand in a big gesture, and it like flew off over the wall. Well, it turns out there's basically like switchback style paths that have been worn in because it's way easier than climbing the stupid stairs. It's not like for tourists though, really.
No, it just is there.
But someone was able to find your ring that way. And I just have to tell you about the ring. So we had stopped maybe that morning at a jade factory. My trip was most definitely a sort of government sanctioned trip. They take you to the jade Costco, basically. and it's the government owned places because they have like a mix of like some privately owned businesses, like what you would have here, and then also government operated ones. So the tour groups, of course, were going there.
Yeah.
And the jade place, it was Jade Costco. They had every kind of jade thing you could ever possibly want to have in your whole entire life, which was super cool. But I did not need a carved jade ship the size of my house or a jade bracelet, even though they're pretty. I just don't wear any jewelry.
Oh, but man, looking at it.
I got a jade, I know, and I love how cold it is. So the apprentices, like the stuff they make, you can buy, you know, for like a few American dollars. So I got like a dog.
The symbol.
Okay, last thing. So back to the mom who just kind of like bounced. She was not Chinese. She's like from the Pacific
Northwest. The number
Northwest.
of people all over the world that are okay with dumping their kids on a total stranger does not make me feel like when they say that they like having kids, that they're telling the truth.
Right. The thing I found interesting though, in China, you're not really dumping them. You're just like, you're aware that other people are there also, and nothing terrible will probably happen.
You have faith in
other
adults.
people, right?
Yeah.
There were these signs all over China, but I'm going to read you guys the ones that were along the Great Wall. And they were called warm prompts in English. And I have put pictures of them on our website. In the sources page, go to them and you can look at some of my photos, including the toilet. But yeah, let me read you some of these warm prompts. All right, so this one's a little long, but this is the English side. Warm prompt of scenic spot. Number 1, protect the ecological environment. Okay, that makes sense. It also says no spitting. Number 2, keep in order consciously during your visit, like basically stay on the path. Number 3, do not crowd, sprint, play, or fight on the narrow steps. Do not appreciate the scenery while walking, and do not walk while appreciating the scenery. I love that. It is so important.
Watch where you're going, people.
None of the steps are the same size.
Please
and coming
watch your
down
feet.
is actually harder than going up.
Oh, very much.
The last one, is reminding you that this is a forest fire prevention area. Basically, don't throw your cigarettes down. It's forbidden to smoke, set off fireworks. And the last sentence says, treasure your life and avoid all dangers. I love it.
That should be on all tourist attractions.
Yes. This other sign, this is what makes me think of the kid thing. So this is warm prompt of scenic spot. Please take good care of the elderly and children around you.
Be aware that you're here as part of a community. I love that.
Right. So that travel agency is not active on Groupon anymore. As many things did during the pandemic, they kind of like, I don't know what happened.
That was a once in a million shot.
It was. Okay, so go check out our website. Look at the pictures. They're super cute. And like and subscribe and share with your friends.
Have a wonderful week.
See you next time. Bye. Bye.